Good evening, everyone. So I am back to do a few more depositions. I'm doing some of the side players actually, so I've got lined up quite a few actually. I'm going to start with Lizzy Talbot, who is obviously the intimacy coordinator. These are just like a collection of short excerpts of depositions, so nothing too long, hopefully. Okay, so yeah, okay. I'll have to work out which side is questioning and who the attorneys are as we go along, if we get that far. Okay. So we're coming in kind of halfway through an answer. We don't know what the question is. And Lizzy says, the more time you have to discuss. And I believe I had a conversation with Justin's assistant who added in Blake's assistant, and that's how we navigated the time for the call. So the attorney then asks, okay, so at some point in early May, you had a phone call with Blake Lively. Correct. Okay, was anyone else on the call? Yes. Who was that? Lindsay. Who is Lindsay? A lawyer for Blake. Do you know her last name? Strasberg, I believe, or something to that effect. So obviously Lindsay Strasberg is the attorney who drafted the 17-point extortion demand. And do you recall what was discussed during that call? Yes. I started on the phone with Lindsay. We had a conversation because I think she recognised me and I potentially recognised her from another project. Either we worked with the same actor or there was some familiarity between us. So we were joined on the call together first, and then Blake joined. We discussed Wrexham Football Club because I grew up in Wales. That's interesting to know. So did I. And then we started to discuss what my role was because she had not worked with an intimacy coordinator before. She described some previous scenes in her career where she had felt unsafe, and I then asked. So that's her attorney now chiming in. Comfort level, her boundaries, and said that I was going to send her Justin's vision and ask for those scenes, that I would be within her consent and boundaries, and that I was going to remove anything that was not, and that I was going to provide her with nudity rider language and to contact me if she needed or wanted anything else. Oh, I don't know who that is then. Herman. Haven't heard that name so far. It could be either team, to be honest. I got that many attorneys. Okay. Did she ever ask you to say she needed or wanted anything else? No. When she referred to feeling unsafe in scenes on other projects or prior projects, did she specify what those projects were? No. Did she specify why she felt unsafe? And we don't get the answer to that because then we jump to another page. So this is Attorney Haggerty. Off the top of my head, could be one of the multitudes of attorneys either side has. I think this is Lizzy Talbot's attorney though, because she is making so Fritz is doing questioning here. I can see Rosa as well, Stephanie Rosa, who is one of Blake Lively's attorneys. Okay, so I think Attorney Haggerty is Lizzy Talbot's attorney because she's instructing Lizzy Talbot to let Fritz finish his question. Lizzy Talbot, sorry. Okay, so Fritz is asking, is the birth scene one of these 5 here? No, it is not. Have you seen the movie? Yes. Okay. Oh, this movie. And then Fritz asks, yeah, this movie. It ends with us. Not in its entirety, pieces of it. It's interesting how many people worked on this movie and then didn't bother to watch it. Okay, have you seen the birthing scene? I have seen the birthing scene. Do you recall any nudity in that? Objection. if you recall. And then her answer, I don't recall any nudity. There was a high hip line that may have been called profile nudity to an extent, and that some actors would require or request a nudity rider for. Do you know if Blake requested that? No, this was not on our discussion. So she didn't request a nudity rider. We know she'd already had it and had been asked to sign it before this scene was shot, and she didn't. She didn't for many more months, in fact. And the way the intimacy coordinator was talking about, well, with this shot, some actors may have wanted or requested this nudity rider for it. Sounded like it was like a personal choice, and one that Blake Lively did not exercise. Okay, so Fritz, let's take a look at 11 quickly. They move forward pages, so we're now on a different page. Question, and did the filming stop at some point? Yes, I believe. So the strike was on at the time, and that was very confusing for many productions that were attempting to film at that time. With this show, I think it stopped around the 1st of early June, I think, of 2023. Sorry, 2023, yes. And then picked back up again, like maybe middle of June, maybe a little bit after that. And then it went down again with the strike, and then it went back up again in early January of 2024. 24, yes. Okay, were there any intimate scenes involving Blake filmed in 2023? Lawyers all object. And then Fritz kind of adds, if you know. Lizzy Talbot, as far as I'm aware, there were no scenes requiring a rider as discussed with Blake in 2023. Did you consult with Justin about a sex? And then they jump. Different page. So we're going straight into she's answering, I think so. And the next question is, okay, what did you discuss with her, if you recall? We discussed the addition of the scene, that what her comfort level would be, and we also discussed what nudity rider language that might look like. And my explanation to her, as is with any actor, is that this is a ceiling. It is not a floor. We can go up to, but not over that. I also expressly confirmed with her from my side that there would be no nudity during the scene. Okay, and that scene was eventually filmed. Correct. Were you on set for that? Yes, I was. Was Blake Lively on set for that? No. Do you know one way or another whether Isabella was satisfied with the way that young Lily's sex scene was filmed and handled? And then there's a bunch of objections, and we don't get the answer to that. Because we go to a different page. And then Fritz is asking, so fair to define nudity to include partial nudity where a particular part of the body is exposed, but not necessarily everything? Objection. Is that fair? Lizzy Talbot. So we define nudity as anything that would be seen underneath a bikini or a pair of Speedos. Okay. So let's think back to the birth scene. She was definitely wearing briefs. That is not anything that would be seen under a bikini. That's the equivalent of wearing a bikini, at least from that part of the body down. From the top, she's covered in a whole bunch of stuff. She continues, one of the most effective ways of doing this is to divide up the body into 4 parts, so that typically is above the waist, below the waist, front and rear. So if we were talking about exposing a performer's buttocks, we might talk about actor consents to perform rear nudity below the waist, including buttocks. And when you say define nudity, who is the we that you refer to there? So SAG has the parameters of nudity as the bikini and Speedos. We as intimacy coordinators do try and specify that in a bit more of a form, because one of the slightly problematic things that we continually run into is that there are many different types of bikini, and that is something that we consistently run into as an issue. And on one occasion is partial nudity also Okay, so midriff being visible is not nudity. You know, the back is not nudity. That's what I'm taking from that anyway, but maybe she'll say something different. Fritz. Okay. And then she continues. For example, like if someone is wearing a crop top in a scene, that would not be defined as nudity. And nudity would also include depicted nudity. So, for example, it would be fair to define it as an actor that is not physically nude during filming, but is portrayed to be nude on film. Actually, no. So implied nudity is something that we don't typically do a rider for, and that's consistent with the format from HBO, where a lot of this work stemmed from. And what do you mean when you say implied nudity? So implied nudity, for example, this is a scene I did recently. It is if you imagine an actor looking in the mirror and they are supposed to be looking at their naked body, but we are only shooting from the collarbone up. So they are actually in a tube top and sweatpants. We would not just describe that as nude on camera because we are not seeing like nipples and genitalia and buttocks. And what about inferred nudity? Implied and inferred nudity would probably be the same thing. So really it's about what the camera sees, not what the camera doesn't see. So for example, if we have this a lot where someone might be under sheets and say they are wearing because they could be wearing sweat shorts and again a tube top under sheets. They're not nude. It's implied nude, but the camera is not capturing anything that would, in that instance, require a nudity rider. There are occasions when actors say, I would like a nudity rider for implied nudity, but typically it will get knocked back by legal because it does not follow the form from SAG-AFTRA of the nudity that's on the bikini. And in your experience, this would have been depicted or implied nudity. Should that be handled with the same sort of sensitivity as full or partial nudity, even if it doesn't require a rider? And we don't get an answer because they go to a different page. Okay. She's in the middle of answering, being a call to SAG straight away. And then the question is, but you considered that it might be a possibility that he would attempt to add additional sexual content to the scene? It was possible. And are aware if Isabella and Alex had executed nudity riders in effect at the time of the scene? They both had nudity riders that were sent to their agents, I believe. Do you know? And then she says, sorry. Her attorney asks, were you done? Were you done answering the question? And then she says, I think so. Okay. Do you know if they had executed the nudity riders at that time? By that scene, I don't know. I think one of the actors was going to sign on set. And again, as long as they sign before we shoot the scene, so they can sign on set right before we shoot the scene. It doesn't have to be like at the beginning of the day because, again, that's our 48 hours. That's where our 48 hours, and then we're continuing, kicks in. Turn to the page with the Bates ending in 3614, please. In this exchange, Mr. Lambert asks you if you spoke to Justin and you respond, yeah, just hand on throat and one on leg. Do you see that? Correct. That was in reference to the action with the parents of Lily Bloom. Okay. And originally that was going to be a slightly more explicit scene, but that got downgraded to a very simple action. So again, no nudity rider required for that. It's just standard choreography. If you could turn back, please, to Exhibit 14 that was introduced by Defendant's Counsel this morning. It's a document. I think Lively's team are questioning here. It's a document ending 3471. Sorry, which? And then Talbot says which one? And then Rosa says it's a text exchange on May the 8th, 2023. And that is where it stops. Just seeing where am I going next. Okay. Well, we'll go to this one, I think. This is the deposition of Shelley and Carroll. Is she the makeup artist or the hair? I feel like she's one of them, but I can't remember. I know the other one's Vivian Baker. I just can't remember who does what off the top of my head. Okay, so this is really short. Okay, so she's in the middle of answering a question. And her only response was, I think, having to do something to do with the birthing scene. And my response was, I don't think you need any extra, visuals or, you're a mother. You have 4 kids of your own. I don't see how. Why would he do that? Or why he felt he needed to do that in conjunction with the scene. So Kristen Bender is asking questions. Garofalo is the Wayfarer attorney. So Bender, you commented to Miss Lively that, as a mother herself, you didn't understand why Mr. Heath needed to show her content of a video of birthing footage. Objection. Correct. When Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively with his phone, could anyone tell what Mr. Heath was about to show Miss Lively? No. Objection. In other words, you had testified that Mr. Heath asked Miss Lively if he could show her his phone, correct? And then we go to a different page. Did you receive call sheets every day? She says yes. During the filming? And did you ever notice that on the call sheets there was a number, HR hotline number? I did not notice. Did you ever call that number? Everyone objects. There doesn't seem to be an answer. Then she's asked, did you ever report inappropriate conduct to anyone connected with the film It Ends With Us? Everyone objects. I only spoke with my colleague. And then Garofalo asks, Miss Baker? And then she says, yes, Miss Baker. And Miss Lively? And Miss Lively, yes. And then she starts to ask, as you sit here today, prior to the end of the first phase of filming in June 2023, do you know whether Miss Lively ever lodged a complaint of any inappropriate conduct on the set of It Ends With Us? And we don't get an answer to that. And just quickly before I move on to the next person, back to Lizzy Talbot. I'm not going to do her full, there is not a full deposition, that's not the right word, but there's a much larger deposition transcript of over 50 pages. I will do a standalone video for that, I think. I'm just trying to get through the short bites here and get through some of these, because there's still so many documents to go through, and it's not going to be long before we have the unsealing of the exhibits from the Jones Works side of all of this as well. So I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible. I'm going to move on to, I think this is Vivian Baker's. Again, I don't know who she is. One's the hairstylist, one's the makeup. This is we've just done one of them. This is the other half. Okay, again, this is another short one. She's in the middle of being asked a question. Again, not sure who's doing the asking, what attorneys are here, but we will kind of work that out if there's enough of it to kind of, make that clear. Okay, so partway through the attorney's question, Mr. Heath arrived unannounced to Miss Lively's trailer. She responds with, not anything specific and certainly not anything quite like that. Over the course of the production on the film, did you or Miss Carroll take any steps to prevent unannounced or uninvited entries to the trailer? She responds, because of where Anne was stationed and where she worked very closely to the door. She told me that she began to lock the door, and it wouldn't necessarily be all the time because the ADs need to come in. And so or Blake's assistants may need to come in. You wouldn't necessarily want to have the door locked because when you're going to have it open, you wouldn't necessarily want to have the door locked because then you're going to have to open it. But there were times that I think she decided if we were definitely going to be in a place of undress, she may lock the door. We were also in a hurry, but it's a little unusual to lock the door, but Anne began to lock it from time to time. And that was to protect Miss Lively's privacy, right? It would protect someone from being able to come in without us opening the door for them to. And then it goes to a different page. Oh, we have my friend redactions back. So we're in the middle of a question, conversations. Is that an accurate description? I have no idea what the context is. She responds, it is accurate. It's also accurate for me to be that way prior to, and then whatever she says is redacted. Then we have an objection. Of course we do. She says, of course not. Then, so it's Garofalo, so Wayfarer doing the questioning. Okay. Did you ever see Stephen Sauritz on the set of It Ends With Us? She says, I wasn't aware if he was. Okay, you met Mr. Sauritz though, is that correct, during production? I'm not aware of meeting him. I may have, but I'm not aware. Okay, so then I assume it's correct that Mr. Sauritz did not make any sexual advances to you during the filming. That would be correct. Okay, and he didn't do anything that you deem inappropriate in connection with the production of the movie that you witnessed, is that correct? That is correct. And there's some objections. And then she reiterates that is correct. Was it your impression that Miss Lively didn't like Mr. Baldoni very much? Objection. Generally, that was not my impression. Really? Did Miss Lively ever criticise Mr. Baldoni's skills to you as a director? I'm not aware of that. Okay, so you don't recall any instance in which Miss Lively complained that he was incompetent, and then it stops, so we don't get the answer to that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go with this one, actually. No, actually, I'm going to go and do... We got 2 snippets of Leslie Sloane excerpts. So we'll do them first. And then I did pull up one of the experts just because I'm fascinated by some of the things she says. So we'll start with Leslie Sloane. I've been curious anyway about this whole Leslie Sloane of this and her involvement. So I've been quite excited to read her deposition transcript. I haven't read it all, but I don't think it overly disappointed, to be fair. All right, so she's answering. Let's see now. So we got Macaulay. Macaulay was Sloane's lawyer at the time. She probably still is in the event of any, because there's still a pending motion for her costs and everything. She is now. They've done an announcement that made it sound like it was a brand new thing, but she's always been part of the team. She is part of Blake Lively's team. Anastasia, I recognize the name. I can't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head. Gabernsky is definitely Lively's. Anastasia could be Wayfarers. So those are the only attorneys I can see here at the moment. Anastasia is objector now. So who is asking the question? I cannot see. No, it's not telling us who's asking the questions, but it's Wayfarers asking them, but I don't know who the attorney is. Okay. So Sloane has just answered, yep, we don't know what to. And did you call her an asshole? Because according to James from the Daily Mail, she was leaking stories to him. Now I'm assuming we are talking, and I do say that very loosely. I assume that we are talking about it's going to be Melissa Nathan or Stephanie Jones. I do not think they're talking about Jen Abel. I'm sure we will figure this out. Okay, so again, and did you call her an asshole because according to James from the Daily Mail, she was leaking stories to him? 3 lawyers all object. Or for another reason. And then Sloane answers, because as I stated earlier, I thought she was leaking the stories. And then she keeps going, leaking or giving or what they use as their favourite word, seeding or planting. Who is they? You said their favourite word. The publicists who were involved in this case. Have you ever seeded a story? No. Have you ever planted a story? No. And we'll go into a different page. The question is, help him win what? Sloane, the attack, the smear campaign that was starting. How do you know Justin Baldoni has anything to do with negative press that Miss Lively was receiving as of August 13th? Objection. I base it on him hiring Melissa Nathan. So you assume that because Justin Baldoni hired Melissa Nathan that they had done something to plant or seed negative stories about Blake Lively? Is that your testimony? Objections. I can add to that by telling you that Melissa Nathan shared with me that he did do some things. That's why she was brought in. When we were on the phone, when I was in Los Angeles, right? So Leslie Sloane is saying that Melissa Sloane, oh God, it gets confusing. Leslie Sloane is basically alleging that Melissa Nathan had a phone call with her and told her that she was brought on because Baldoni was smearing Lively, which just undercuts the argument that Lively was smeared because Melissa Nathan was brought on. It makes no sense. So the attorney then goes back and says, well, do you have an answer to my question? Because technically she's not answered the question. Her attorney objects, asked and answered. Sloane, so I'm sorry, please repeat that. So you assume that because Justin had hired Melissa Nathan that they had done something to plant or seed negative stories about Blake Lively. Is that your testimony? Objection. My testimony, I believe. I'm sorry, please just repeat that one more time. I'm getting a little tired, so please repeat that. We can take a break in a moment. I don't want a break. I just want to repeat that. God, the attitude. I asked you, how do you know Justin Baldoni had anything to do with the negative press that Ms. Lively was receiving as of August 13th? Do you recall that question that I asked you? Yes, and I answered it because he hired Melissa Nathan. Correct? I mean, is she asking the question? So the attorney then asks, so you're assuming that because Justin Baldoni hired Melissa Nathan that he had done anything to smear Blake Lively's reputation. And we saw this with Ryan Reynolds' text messages, by the way. Oh, he's got a crisis PR. This is what he was saying to Colleen Hoover. Well, he's got crisis PR, so, he's clearly smearing us. That's what Ryan Reynolds told Colleen Hoover. So again, she's been asked, so you're assuming that because Justin Baldoni hired Melissa Nathan that he had done anything to smear Blake Lively's reputation? Objection. I'm not assuming. Melissa Nathan did share with me on a phone call that she was hired to come in to clean his messes up, that he was lucky to have her. He did some stupid things. So, yeah. Did she tell you that she was going to seed or plant negative press about Blake Lively on Justin's behalf? It was the opposite. She told me she wasn't doing it. Okay, so again, what basis did you have to believe that Justin Baldoni or Melissa Nathan had anything to do with the negative press that Blake Lively was receiving as of August 13th? Objection. Her lawyer then objects and says, asked and answered. No, it isn't, though. That's just it. It has not been answered. Sloane, my knowledge in the industry and the fact that Melissa is a crisis manager. So then she's asked, you made an assumption, correct? No. Objection. Oh, so what facts is it based on? Objection. She's told she can answer. Oh, thank you. facts that Melissa shared with me that he did make some mistakes and he did do some things, and that's why they brought her in. Right. You just testified that she didn't tell you that she was going to be doing anything to seed or plant or create negative press about Miss Lively. Correct? Objection. Sloane. She didn't say she wasn't. That's referring to my emails that you'll pull at some point with her, text with her that said that. But no, she shared with me that Justin's somewhat of an idiot and did stupid things, and that's why she's here to clean them up. So that's what I base this on. So you assume because Melissa Nathan, and then she jumps in and goes, I don't assume. Woman, it sounds like you do. I don't assume. That is what I'm basing it on. Different word. Oh. So because Melissa Nathan didn't tell you that she wouldn't plant negative stories, you're assuming that she did. Objection. Didn't say that. I'll say it a third time. Because Melissa Nathan shared with me that he'd done some and then it cuts off and I was kind of enjoying that. Okay, so I'll try and make sense of that. Basically the question is, Leslie Sloane, as of the 13th of August, why do you believe Justin Baldoni was smearing Blake Lively or planting anything negative about Blake Lively? Well, it's because he hired a crisis PR. Okay. So you're assuming that just because he hired Melissa Nathan that he was planting some stuff? No, she told me. She told me that she had been brought in because he was doing shit like that and he was planting stuff. Oh, okay. So did Melissa Nathan say that she'd come into and she was going to be planting negative stuff? No, she told me that she was hired because he was planting negative stuff and she had been brought on and she wasn't going to be planting negative stuff. Okay, so you made an assumption. No. And then we just get into a teenage stupid I don't even know how to describe it, but basically it completely undercut, right? So if Blake Lively's saying, well, I was smeared from this point, Blake, then Leslie Sloane has just kind of contradicted that. Because what Leslie Sloane is basically saying is up until that point, that Justin Baldoni was smearing Blake Lively, but they brought on Melissa Nathan to stop the smear campaign. During the, before the alleged smear campaign even peaked. And if you listen to Lively's saying it's still going on today. So I'm really confused by the timeline of events that completely contradict each other from Leslie Sloane, Ryan Reynolds, and Blake Lively. And I do think that Leslie Sloane, much like her employers, is just talking out of her backside. Okay, so we're on a different page now anyway. Is this the same page? Okay. So she's in the middle of a answer. She seems really catty. She doesn't seem like a very pleasant person at all from her answers. Okay. So partway through Leslie Sloane's answer, one thing from James. I'm sorry, I have to read the email, all the paperwork from James. I feel the fact that you're asking me that question, that is somewhere there. And then, oh yes, it is Fritz. Sorry, Fritz is doing the question. That's it. Fritz then asks, why do you assume that? And then Sloane says, because every time you ask me a question, you produce a document. I've noticed your pattern. By the way, this is this is what lawyers do. By the way, is they'll ask you a question, and 9 times out of 10, they will already know the answer and then produce the evidence. It's not a pattern. It's a very effective form of questioning. Leslie Sloane seems a bit put out by it. Then she continues, I pick up on things. Oh my god. And I'm not going to get in trouble. And I'm not going to get in trouble for this. What is she talking about? Fritz, I'm happy to withdraw the question and move on. It's not in any of the documents I've shown you so far. Oh, that was a meltdown she had, wasn't it? Sloane, then thank you. Please move on because I can't answer that. Fritz, did James from the Daily Mail ever tell you? We're talking about James Watuska here, obviously. Did James from the Daily Mail ever tell you that Melissa Nathan had not done anything anti-Blake? Do you recall that? Objection. Yes. Did you at the time have any reason to disbelieve him? Sloane. In that case, knowing their friendship, I questioned it. Okay. And her close friendship with the Daily Mail and the entire LA office, and that her sister over the years has told me how close they were to all the women at the Daily Mail. Yes. Fritz, have you ever seen any documents, emails, text messages from Melissa Nathan to anyone demonstrating that Melissa Nathan caused anything negative to be written about Blake Lively? Objection. I've seen texts in the complaints that she made a reference to a reporter that Jen Abel had, or Jen Abel did, both of them. They had, and then it cuts off and rambling. Okay, so let's go to this one now. This is also Leslie Sloane. Yeah, this is Leslie Sloane. Okay. So this is part of a different. This is been filed with a different filing, so that's why it's going to be a different excerpt. Some of the stuff may be in here that we've just read. That kind of can't be helped, but we'll just go over it again if that's the case. Okay, so again, at this point, Macaulay's objecting, so Fritz is still the questioning attorney. Fritz, and how long have you worked as a publicist? Sloane, I think I've been in the business for 35 years as a publicist, 31 and a half. And it's part of the job of the publicist to suppress negative stories that may be published about his or her client. Objection. Sloane, part of my job is to receive incoming calls or to take incoming calls and to try and balance out stories if they're negative and if they're untrue. When you say balance out, what do you mean by that? Well, when you balance a story, and I get calls often from many clients, most of the time with wrong information, I usually just try to work with them on just ignore them or try to get it balanced. There is absolutely no way that a negative story about Ryan Reynolds or Blake Lively, Leslie Sloane is sitting there and just trying to ignore it. That's not what she gets. She does not get paid to ignore things. That is bullshit. Oh my God. Right, okay. So then the next question is, how do you know the information is wrong in any given? It does cut off though. And then we're in a different page where Macaulay is objecting. Sloane, I don't recall. Fritz, so sitting here today, those items you just mentioned, you don't know which of the actors, whether it's Isabella or one of the other actors, you don't know who said what. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Why did you deem it necessary, if you did, to tell Sarah Nathan that the whole cast isn't speaking with Justin Baldoni? Objection. Probably to soften up the article that she was trying to write about my client. What? Fritz, there was going to be negative content about Blake Lively in the article? Objection. From our conversation, there was going to be negative about Justin and Blake in the article, and it's my job as a publicist to try to make it a fair story. So yes, I deemed it necessary to give that information. You wanted Sarah Nathan to print the alleged fact that the whole cast isn't speaking with Justin, correct? Objection. I never said alleged. Well, Leslie Sloane, maybe you should have said alleged. Fritz, you wanted Sarah Nathan to print that the whole cast isn't speaking with Justin, correct? Objection. I just shared it with Sarah Nathan to give some perspective. Yes. Okay. And you testified, it's my job as a publicist to try to make it a fair story. Do you recall that testimony? I think I said the word balanced. Okay, and you thought the way to balance the story was to include an additional negative statement about Justin, correct? Objection. I took it as speaking the truth. But you wanted her to print this negative fact about Justin, correct? I never said I wanted her to print it. I wanted her to have the information. I mean, what's a reporter going to do with information? They're going to print it. Fritz, and you wanted her to have the information so that she could print it, correct? Objection. Again, I've never said I wanted her to print it. I wanted to share the information so we balance out the story. Just make sure this. Yeah, it continues. Well, you wrote, "I need artist source. Whole cast isn't speaking with him." Do you see that? I had said before I saw that, yes. What did you mean by need? Again, I don't recall what artist source is, so I don't know. Okay, and you wanted Sarah Nathan to include the statement that the whole cast isn't speaking with Justin because it would somehow make Blake Lively look better. Objection. Again, I said I shared it with Sarah Nathan to try and balance out the story. That is her choice whether she would write it or not. And what do you mean by balance out the story? As I previously stated, it was going to be a story about both of them, and if you go to the pages that I'm looking at, there was going to be some backlash with Blake. Felt he looked at her while she was breastfeeding. Is this continuing? Yeah. While she was breastfeeding, he lingered too long while kissing her in a scene, told her she smelled good, all of it creepy. So I took that this was not going to be a positive story for either of them while opening a movie. And you felt it necessary to pile on with the negative statements about Justin, correct? Okay, so let me just bubble back a bit. Fritz, and you felt it was necessary to pile on with the negative statements about Justin, correct? Objections. I felt it necessary to share that with her, yes. Okay. And then you also mentioned they had spectate screening rooms at the premiere. I think that's supposed to be separate. Screening rooms at the premiere. Sorry, what does that mean? They had separate screening rooms. There were 3 different screening rooms at the premiere. Why did you tell Sarah Nathan that? I kind of feel something's missing here. Because there is some. Does she continue? No, it's a different page. Oh, I want to know what's missing. Okay, Fritz. Miss Sloane, we've handed you what's been marked as Sloane Exhibit 12. It's a text message or chain of text messages. Mm-hmm. Do you recognize these text messages? Yes. Okay, and is James V the reporter from Daily Mail? So it's obviously James Vatuska. Yes. Okay, so do you see on the second page of the document, which is the first page on which there were any text messages on the morning of the 8th of August 8th, James writes to you, well, it's a lot to text, but it's regarding probs on set involving her and Justin Baldoni and fallout over that with Blake being labelled as difficult and a power struggle existing. Do you see that? Yes. Okay, and you responded, your info is totally off, correct? Yes. Why did you believe that information was totally off? Because I was not aware that there were any struggles. Right. But you think you testified a few moments ago you didn't know one way or another whether there was a power struggle, correct? Objection. I thought I said if I was incorrect that I was unaware that there was any issues on the set. Right. So if you're unaware, isn't it fair to say that you had no basis to tell him that what he was telling you was totally off? Objection. Not necessarily, no. What? Oh my goodness. Okay, when you told him that the info was totally off, was the sole basis for that statement because you hadn't heard of the issues? Objection. That I can't recall. Then toward the middle of the page, James from the Daily Mail writes, one of them said that Blake and Ryan insisted on rewriting the movie. Do you see that? Is this on the same page? It is. Toward the middle, the text at 10:35 a.m. Okay, thank you. That's embedded within one of the. Okay, yes, I see that. Okay, so when you got this text message, did you know one way or another whether Blake and Ryan insisted on rewriting the movie? No, I did not. Okay, and in these text messages, is James telling you that he learned of this information according to him from Stephanie Jones, correct? Objection. Well, as James states, I see what you're referring to at 11:17. Okay. So what is the question you're asking me? I apologize. Did you have an understanding from him that he had received this information from Stephanie Jones? Objection. Or someone else? I don't remember what I believed. And then you see at the bottom you wrote, I promise she is lying. Yes. She is a reference to Stephanie Jones? I don't recall. Okay, whoever you are referring to, how were you able to promise that she was lying? I probably misspoke at the time. Okay, it's fair to say you didn't know one way or the other. At the time you received these text messages whether Blake and Ryan insisted on rewriting the movie, correct? Objection. That would be correct. You can put that aside. Thank you. He continues, you've been handed what's been marked as Sloane Exhibit 13, which is a text chain. Do they continue on the same page? No, we're going to a different page now. Okay. Fritz, how was anything in this text message going to hurt Blake? Macaulay objects, asked and answered. Sloane, again, I cannot recall. Do you see where you wrote, you are airing an animal? Yes. Who is the animal you were referring to? I think I previously stated that it was Justin Baldoni. What basis did you have to call him an animal? I think I also say that that was my take on him, and I had the right to my own opinion. So I'm asking what basis you had to call him an animal. I felt like it. Okay, why? I felt like it. Yeah, why did you feel the need to call him an animal? Oh, we don't get the answer. It's a different page. Well, I feel like calling Leslie Sloane an asshole. Anyway, so speaking of the asshole, Sloane, she's answering something here. We don't know the question. So her answer is yes. And I answered because he hired Melissa Nathan. I guess it's why do you think he was planting anything? We have come back to that again. Or this is a duplication of, I think this is a duplication of what I've just read. I'm going to go through it anyway, just in case it's not, and they've circled back. Okay. Fritz, so you were assuming that because Justin Baldoni hired Melissa Nathan that he had done anything to smear Blake Lively's reputation. Objection. I'm not assuming. Melissa Nathan did share with me on a phone call that she was hired to come in to clean his messes up. That he was lucky to have her. He did some stupid things, so yeah. Did she tell you that she was going to plant or seed negative press about Blake Lively on Justin's behalf? It was the opposite. She told me she wasn't doing it. Okay, so again, what basis did you have to believe that Justin Baldoni or Melissa Nathan had anything to do with the negative press that Blake Lively was receiving as of August 13th? Objection. We're moving to a different page. Right, we're halfway through a question. So even though it would put Justin in a negative light, correct? Objection. Sloane, as you can read, my response says it's in the press already, so it's already out there. So in your world, it's okay to tell a reporter to include negative statements about someone if someone else in the press has already reported it. Is that your testimony? She's treading dangerous ground here by saying, well, it's already out in the public, so therefore it's fair game to, rehash it. Then she's kind of destroying Blake Lively's smear campaign because, as we all know, the vast majority of the backlash and her quote unquote smear campaign was kind of the organic nature in which people dug up old interviews and, crap that she had done in the past, which she'd managed to get hidden, but now could not hide. That's all that was. So if she's saying it's fair game for someone to put something that's already public, but negative about Justin Baldoni out there, then she's kind of saying and conceding that it's okay for them to do the same thing to Blake Lively. I'm going to laugh at the stupidity and irony here. Okay, so, and then Macaulay objects. Sloane says, I was okay with that, yes. Fritz, okay, do you have an understanding of what Blake Lively's allegations are with respect to retaliation in this case? You can see where he's going. It's going the same way that I was going with it. Macaulay, objection. I'm just going to instruct you to the extent that you have information as a result of conversations with your attorneys, you cannot respond. If you have it independent of that, you're welcome to respond. Right, so we don't find out because it goes to a different page. She's in the middle of answering. Then one thing from James. I'm sorry, I have to read the email, all the paperwork from James. I feel the fact you're asking me that question, that it's somewhere here. We have read this already, but I'm going to go back over it again just in case it's got more. Fritz, why do you assume that? Because every time you ask me a question, you produce a document. I've noticed your pattern. I pick up on things. I'm not going to get in trouble for this. Fritz, I'm happy to withdraw the question and move on. It's not in any of the documents I've shown you so far. Then thank you. Please move on, because I can't answer that. Did James from the Daily Mail tell you that Melissa Nathan had not done anything anti-Blake? Do you recall that? Objection. Yes. Did you at the time have any reason to disbelieve him? In that case, knowing their friendship, I questioned it. Okay. She continues, and her close relationship with the Daily Mail and the entire LA office, and that her sister over the years had told me how close they were to all the women at Daily Mail. Yes. Have you ever seen any documents, emails, text messages from Melissa Nathan to anyone demonstrating that Melissa Nathan had caused anything negative to be written about Blake Lively? Objection. I've seen texts in the complaints that she made a reference to a reporter that Jen Abel had, or Jen Abel did, both of them, they had, and then it cuts off. So that was fascinating. So this is a portion of a deposition of one of the experts. Now, the expert is Ashlee Humphries. It's not too much, but I do find this interesting. So I did want to go through it, actually. Okay. So this deposition on behalf of Wayfair is Shouster. We'll have to figure out who the other attorneys are in this. He's doing the questioning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Humphries. She responds, good morning. My name is Mitchell Shouster. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Meister, Seelig and Fain, and I represent the defendants in this action that has brought us together this morning. I'm going to ask you a series of questions throughout the day. Hopefully it won't run into the end of the day, but I will do my best to be as efficient as possible. Have you ever been deposed before? Yes. And we're now jumping to another page. I'm going to assume that it's still Shouster at this point. Did you do that? She says yes. So you said introducing new negative associations, and you referred to Mr. Friedman's statements about her lying in a government document, and then you go on to say and or strengthen existing negative associations. Were there existing negative associations with her in the public sphere? Yes. I bet that blew her mind to have to hear this. Chaucer, okay. What were the existing negative associations about Blake Lively that were strengthened by Mr. Friedman? I would need to go point you to the impact analysis, but at a high level, I believe it's the association that she was a bully, and some of the other associations that are congruent with the alleged retaliation campaign. Was Mr. Friedman, do you recall Mr. Friedman withdrawn? Do you recall reading that Mr. Friedman referred to Blake Lively as a bully? Yes, I believe that is in one of the statements, although we could go check to confirm. Okay, do you know if Blake Lively ever, and I think they they go to a different page. Part of a retaliatory campaign, it's a question. She responds, so what I can tell you based on Dr. Maislin's findings is that the phase tone deaf experienced a dramatic uptick in the month of August and I believe again in December. And that corresponded again with Dr. Maislin's report with the alleged dates of the retaliatory campaign. Okay, do you have any opinion as to whether a third party who uses the word tone deaf is participating in a retaliation campaign? I can tell you at the aggregate level, the term tone deaf increased dramatically during the period. Do you know the person who used the term tone deaf? Which person? The one in the post we were just talking about. So she says, so if someone used the term tone deaf, and they have, and I can't find the exact post right now, and that person, what proof, if any, do you have? Oh, hold on. Is this a different page? Yeah, no. What proof, if any, do you have? Not Dr. Maislin. What proof, if any, do you have that poster was participating in the retaliation campaign allegedly initiated by the defendants? That sounds like it's a question, but it sounds like the stenographer has written this wrong because that is the attorney asking a question and it's continuing into the next page. I've just checked that. But okay, so that's an attorney asking the question, like what proof, apart not Dr. Mason, but what proof do you have that the poster was that if someone posted something on social media about Blake Lively using the term tone deaf, what proof is there that they were participating in a retaliation campaign initiated by Wayfarer? Objection. And now the expert is going to answer. So as I testified yesterday, I do not offer an opinion on the retaliatory campaign itself. I can tell you that the dramatic increase in the term tone deaf occurred in that period as cited in Dr. Maislin's report, and I can tell you from my impact analysis that the association caused reputational harm. Okay, but if the tone deaf was caused by Blake Lively, isn't the reputational harm her problem? Objection. I don't offer an opinion on that matter. Shouster, are you aware that Miss Lively was the reason for an assistant director who worked on her film A Simple Favor for quitting her job? And I'm pretty, they changed page. I really wanted to see that continue. So we've had assistant directors quit on A Simple Favor. We've had assistant directors fired on It Ends With Us. In both cases because of Blake Lively. Just let that marinate for a minute. So we're starting a new page and partway through the expert's answer. I don't know what the question is, but statements. One is my analysis of the alleged retaliatory campaign. The plantation. Oh, they got into her getting married on a plantation. The Plantation Association is not relevant to my assessment of Mr. Friedman's statements because I do base the damages purely on his statements alone and the damage to his statements alone. Regarding part one, as we spoke about earlier, prior associations with Miss Lively were kind of built into that before time period in Dr. Maislin's analysis. And so we're comparing that before period where that is already known to the after period where you see the dramatic rise in negative sentiment and in association such as tone deaf, bully, and so forth. Well, so says Shouster. Well, Wouldn't it be reasonable to assume that there would be a rise in negative sentiment if someone had previously done some bad things or said some bad things? Wouldn't people be predisposed to say, huh, so now she's doing XYZ, but I remember a few years ago she did ABC. Yeah, I'm not a fan anymore. Wouldn't those things be completely irrelevant to anything Brian Friedman did or said? Objection. We're going to a different page. But that is an absolutely amazingly good point. It's well framed question there from Shouster. Like, well, hold on. In the past, she's done this. Now she's doing this. I don't like her. Okay. So this is question. Are you aware that in August, from August 6th to the 9th of 2024, the film's premiere event, the theatrical release, triggered a surge in public engagement, including fan commentary, influencer reactions, red carpet coverage, and opening weekend box office reporting? Would you agree with that? Objection. She says, I would need to look at the underlying sources, but I don't have a reason to disagree with that. He asks, would those types of events increase attention to the film, the actors, and or the drama that had been going on? She says, so what I observed in Dr. Maitland's report of this very issue, analysis of this very issue, was that not only was there increased volume, but there was also increased negative sentiment during the August time period. And there was increased negative associations congruent with the alleged retaliation campaign. Is it possible that the negative sentiment related to Blake Lively's threats in connection with... And then we go to a different page. Oh, I really want to know what some of these answers. So she's been asked, were they asked whether they considered her a liar? Her response is, it was not in the public discourse, meaning it was not attached to her reputation. Shouster, but it doesn't mean people were not aware of it. Doesn't mean people didn't have underlying feelings. It doesn't mean that people didn't have underlying experiences about viewing her, reading about her, observing her. So it could have been something dormant that her initiation of this very public lawsuit brought to the forefront of the conversation. Isn't that a possibility? Objection. I have no evidence to support that. Well, there's no evidence to support that anyone smeared Blake Lively either, but here you are as an expert on it. Shouster, do you have evidence to support that Miss Lively engaged in prior conduct that would alienate members of the public? Objection. Not exactly, no. And then Shouster starts to ask, do you think getting married on a slave... And then it stops. But you know where that was headed. Okay, so we have a new page. Shouster, well, but he doesn't make his statements until she initiated a very public lawsuit. So there would have been no reason for it to be in the public discourse. Objection. The expert. So reputation exists in the public discourse. It's the associations that are connected with one's name in the public sphere. As my analysis shows on page 92 and 93, for example, the association between Miss Lively and being a liar was virtually zero. What? Until after Mr. Friedman's statement. Really? Shasta, did you ever research Blake Lively's company that she started with her brother? Oh. She responds, I did not. Where the lawsuits that were commenced against Blake Lively and her brother for creating a toxic work environment? I did not. Objection. Well, because that was not at the forefront of a Google search, does that mean it's not true? Yeah. Oh, I love it. I really want to get the whole deposition there because it seems like Shasta just dismantled her. Loved it. And really, really, really defended Friedman as well, which I love. All right. So I'm going to pause it there because I do want to... I've got a full... well, a more fuller... It's not the full, but I got a bigger set of the Lizzy Talbot, the intimacy coordinator deposition. I also want to get to Josh Greenstein and Danny Greenberg and Warren Zavala deposition transcripts. So I'm going to do all of that tomorrow now, I think. All right, guys, have a good evening.